Did you hear the one about the biracial American male who was orphaned at age 11 with a sixth grade education who went on to change the world and saved untold thousands of lives? Yeah, I didn't think so. Cue the music. Now, Frederick McKinley Jones was born May 17th, 1893 in Covington, Kentucky to a black American mother and a white Irish father. You see, Fred's mom died when he was about 4 years old, and his dad passed away when he was 11, and he went to Cincinnati to stay at a rectory, like a youth boys' home. But at age 13, he went out to work in the city as a janitor at an auto mechanic shop, and by age 15, he was the foreman. There was literally nothing Fred put his hands on that he couldn't fix, and when World War I rolled around, he got drafted into the Army. But his skills were so exceptional that generals were cut backroom deals with each other to trade temporary duty assignments so Frederick McKinley Jones could come to their camps because he would rewire the electricity, the communications, everything. He was so effective. He was one of the few black American soldiers in World War I to be promoted to sergeant. Fred went into town to find a job, and he did a lot of odd jobs, but landed one at a movie theater. And this is where his genius really began to show. First off, he's the one who created the first movie ticket dispensing machine. You know, when you went to the movies and it went, chick, chick. Yeah, that's him. When he was up there, doctors couldn't get out to make house calls during the brutal winters of Minnesota. So he took an airplane, put it on skis, and took the doctors around so they could make house calls, becoming one of the forerunners for the modern snowmobile. Oh no, that's not all. He also saw the need on these house calls to create a portable x-ray machine. And he did. But while working in this movie theater, talking pictures were coming along. You know, there had only been silent films that long, and this theater could not afford to upgrade to the new equipment it takes to match the audio with the video of the pictures. So for less than $100, Frederick McKinley Jones took parts and assembled a digitizer and a synchronizer that would play the audio in track with the silent film as it was shown. That's pretty incredible in itself. I'm just getting started. A man named Joseph Numero came to the theater and he heard the sound system and was so impressed he asked the manager where did he get it. The manager said, hey, I got a guy here as a technician. He's the one who built it. Joseph Numero hired Fred on the spot to come work for his cinema services company who made movie theater speakers. Now please pay attention because this is when it starts to get good. While he was working for Joseph Numero, Mr. Numero had went on a golfing trip with some buddies. And he was there with the gentleman who was the president of Warner Transportation. Yeah, Warner Truck Lines is still in business. This is the 1930s. Now the problem that Mr. Warner was having is when he was trying to ship chickens cross country in vehicles, they would heat up and spoil and they'd lose the whole load and they had no solution to it. So Joseph Numero looked at Mr. Warner and said, I got a guy, let me see what I can do. Now Joseph goes to Fred and said, hey, I need help. Fred said, all right, let me see what I can do. 2 weeks later, did you hear me? 2 weeks later, Frederick McKinley Jones had drawn the first refrigerated portable cooling system, like you see on 18-wheelers and railroad cars with a big refrigerator up front. That's what Frederick McKinley Jones invented. Now let me tell you why it's so important. As I explained with the chickens, you couldn't ship them very far. I'm from Arkansas, where Tyson Chicken's based, and we grow a ton of chickens. But it's hard to ship them to southern Texas, it's hard to ship them to California when you can't keep them frozen. And what this did is allowed the frozen food industry to scale up and ship their products nationwide with very limited spoilage, driving food costs down. Go look at the frozen meat and other goods in your freezer that if you thawed out for too long it would ruin. It's in your freezer now because it got to the stores because Frederick McKinley Jones invented Thermo King. Now this was in the 1930s, and in 1949, Fred Jones sold his share of Thermo King for today's equivalent of $32 million. This company is so successful, they dominate about half of the global market. And in 1997, they were sold to Ingersoll Rand for $2.56 billion. But how did he save lives? We know he saved frozen goods. I'm glad you asked. Dr. Charles Drew, the godfather of human blood and the first athletic director at Morgan State University, as well as a football coach, partnered with Fred Jones to create mobile blood banks to be used in World War II. Now, Dr. Drew understood more about human blood than anybody in history before him, and he understood platelets and plasma, and how to ship them and reconstitute it to soldiers in battle. And Fred Jones gave him the machinery and mechanism that they could ship these items. They also created gasoline-powered mobile refrigeration systems that they could ship food to soldiers overseas. He saved untold numbers of lives with Dr. Drew. Now, Mr. Frederick McKinley Jones passed away in 1967, but he leaves a legacy that affects us all today. He has 61 patents, and he's also in the National Inventors Hall of Fame, and he's considered one of the 100 greatest Black Americans. But I disagree. I think he belongs on the list of 100 greatest Americans. And that's the story of how a biracial man with a 6th grade education, orphaned at 11 years old, went out and changed the world and saved an untold number of lives. Have a great day.